I'm going to briefly go over something that I've mentioned a little bit in the past, and that is picture what it would be like if reality adhered to the golden rule. Now, what exactly does that mean? See, the golden rule is like a moral or ethical idea that, treat your neighbor as you would thyself, that sort of a thing. And it's found at the core of every religion. But what we mean here is like picture if every single belief, idea, proposal, etc., if they were all treated equally. And not just every idea or belief. Like picture even if we were to get very zen with it and talk about like the dropping of all ideas and the dropping of all beliefs and the dropping of all thoughts and concepts, like even all that stuff. Picture if all that were to get treated equally to ideas, beliefs, and thoughts, such that even this distinction between the very zen like, no thought, sort of emptier than emptiness category was perfectly equivalent to a mind full of thoughts, beliefs, proposals, etc. Like there was no distinction between them. Neither one was better than the other or more truthful than the other. So like picture if all of these were to be validated and treated as equally. So like literally all of them were true. And so I unpacked this in more detail in my last video where I talked about, the ad hoc nature of my condition and what that would say of reality, if reality is truly like that, right? That you can always just keep going further and saying anything, right? And contradicting yourself and smoothing over the contradictions and all that stuff. So essentially you would get every single proposal even ones further than everything I said in the last video, because even I could have gone further in the last video. So even proposals eternally further than what I mentioned in the last video, even all of those would be treated equally under this golden rule. So rather than a moral golden rule, it would be more like an ontological golden rule. But see, that's the thing. It wouldn't actually be ontological anymore. It would instead be ontologically independent. And by ontologically independent, what I mean is that quite literally it's independent from all ontologies, or it's independent from ontology itself. It's independent from metaphysics. You could say it's independent from philosophy, because the reason why is if you're sort of adhering to this golden rule and validating all ontologies and all types of metaphysics equally, well then it's like, okay, yeah, you're compatible with any of them and all of them, but that means you don't really fit into the category of any of them, right? Like you fit into all of them because you're compatible with all of them, yet at the same time, you therefore are none of them, right? You're all of them and none of them, so you're sort of just like, you transcend all that, you're independent of all that. So in that sense, it's ontologically independent. And so that's also what essentially makes it independent of philosophy. I mean, you don't really want to use anything that I'm saying here for philosophy, because if you do, you're just going to end up doing shit philosophy. If you end up validating all proposals and non-proposals, etc., you're not going to be able to advance any premises to a conclusion, which is what philosophy is. You need to have something very distinct and succinct in order to build up a position, right? In order to do philosophy. So you can't do philosophy with this mush, as I've called it. So you have to look at it as being its own thing, which is sort of independent of philosophy or transcendent to philosophy. It's not incompatible with philosophy. Again, it's precisely the opposite. It's that it's so compatible with any and all philosophies that it's philosophically independent. It's so compatible with any and all ontologies that it's ontologically independent. So that's what I mean when I say, don't use it to do philosophy. Not that it's incompatible with philosophy, just that it's got to be treated as independent of that. You have that, and then you can focus in on a specific philosophical position to support, which is how we can do science still, right? Like nothing that I'm saying here would have to undermine science. We would just look at things specifically. Even on that note, think of it this way. If reality adhered to the golden rule, you could get very isolated proposals also being validated, therefore very isolated truths could exist. For example, maybe it's simply true that we just live in a purely empirical scientific universe. As I've said before, that would make it very easy to focus in on science as an isolated proposal and keep doing science and keep progressing our knowledge as we have been. So again, that's where none of this is incompatible with science or philosophy. It's just it's independent of it because it's compatible with any and all proposals. And now see, even though you could get very isolated proposals like a purely physical universe being validated via this golden rule, you could also get things which are in direct opposition to that also being validated equally. Like if you want a more in-depth example of that, go and watch my couple videos on what I call the storytelling axiom. The storytelling axiom is one method by which you could say reality is able to go subprimary. What does subprimary mean? Well, primary is like things where we reach a level that we can't divvy up any further. We can't divide it up any further. We cannot carve underneath it. So like the example of primary colors. I mean, there's different ways to categorize primary colors. Some people say red, green, and blue are primary colors. I believe in computer graphics, it's like cyan, magenta, and yellow. I honestly don't even know if I pronounced cyan correctly. Is it cyan? I may have completely mispronounced that. I'm not super good with colors, but you get what I mean. But anyways, red, yellow, blue, that's like the standard way to categorize primary colors. So if we just use the color red as an example, as soon as you work your way down to red, you can't divide red up any further. There's no colors that you can combine into red. Yes, you could make red lighter, you can make it duller, you can make it darker, take away some of the saturation or the color, but you can't divide it up into any other colors. What I'm telling you is that, reality, I mean, even in my condition, I have experiences with these types of things where you can go subprimary. You can indeed have colors beneath red, which you could combine together into red. And not just one level beneath red, but you go down an endless number of levels, even an ad hoc number of levels, just on and on, further and further and further. It keeps going. Now, you may want to ask me for some examples of what these colors are like, but that's the thing is when people ask me these sorts of questions, I have to cherry pick because I could literally say anything. I could tell you that one of these colors looks like the letter Q, but not in shape. No, I mean the texture, the vibrance, the hue looks like the letter Q, but without being a shape. It doesn't make any sense, but again, there are indeed colors like that, and so I can literally just say anything and it'll be there. It's that sort of ad hoc feature of the experience again, where I can literally say anything or add anything into it and it'll already be in there, it'll already be accommodated. So that's why there's almost no reason to even ask me those sorts of questions, because you could say anything yourself without even asking me the question, and even what you say will already be correctly describing something that's in there in detail as well, even if you don't know what you're talking about, right? Because you have anything in there, so there isn't really a notion of correct or incorrect anymore, so much so that there is still a notion of correct and incorrect. But anyways, the point here is that reality in that sort of a way, if we have this golden rule reality, it would be able to go subprimary. And primary colors are just one example of a primary thing. If we look at another example, direct experience is primary. This is brought up a lot in the spiritual community, people going on and on and on about how direct experience is king and yada, yada, yada. But what I'm essentially telling you is you can go subprimary on, or at least reality can go subprimary on direct experience as well. Yeah, it makes no sense to say that direct experience could be divided up, because direct experience is very obviously indivisible. No matter what you do with it, it's always going to be sort of singular and unified. But what I'm saying is, yeah, those sorts of nonsensical things which can divide up the indivisible, those are there. Things which can literally carve underneath direct experience. And again, the storytelling axiom is one example of how that can be done. You can get things which very obviously defy your direct experience to be true. For example, it's very obviously false to say you're experiencing what it is like to be a pig right now. and like you really, really, really feel that you're experiencing what it's like to be a pig right now. Obviously, that's in direct defiance to your direct experience, but the storytelling axiom is just one method out of an endless variety of methods by which even those blatantly false proposals which directly defy your direct experience, even those can be true. So there are ways to satisfy even proposals which go against your very direct experience. So it's not just that a golden rule reality could satisfy isolated proposals like what you're experiencing right now. No, it could satisfy those isolated proposals in addition to the ones that go directly against it. So it would be possible for it to satisfy all proposals and treat them equally. It would be equally true that you really are tangibly feeling what it's like to experience a pig's life right now as it is to say you're experiencing what it's like to be here watching this. Both would be equally real. And you'd say, well, Ethan, they don't feel equally real. Even the fact that they would feel equally real would be true. Again, see, we're delving into insanity here. We're talking about things which very obviously go against what you're experiencing, right? To say that you're not just experiencing them equally, but you even feel like they're equal, even though you would tell me, Ethan, no, I don't. And that's the thing. It's not just that you feeling as if they're equal would be true. No, this is, again, a golden rule which validates all proposals. So even the asymmetric proposal, which just says you feel this direct experience to be more real than that one, even that would be true, and voila, here you are, right? So yeah, there's no way to really make sense of it. Again, this is independent of philosophy. You can't really do any good philosophy with this stuff because it's just all out there, right? So that's essentially what the implications of a golden rule reality would be, is that, all things are validated. Now, what you have to notice is that this is very different than a spiritual topic like the law of attraction, where you say, okay, like everything you think about or desire or believe, etc., manifests. What the reason you have to see why this is much more radical than a sort of law of attraction idea is that, again, you have to realize that even very isolated proposals are going to be validated also. So what about, again, the isolated proposal that we just live in a purely empirical universe and there's no such thing as a law of attraction, everything is just made of energy and quantum probabilities and atoms and light, gravity, strong force, weak force, right? Like electromagnetic force, like that's all there is, because that's the sort of isolated proposal we're living in, because of course that isolated proposal is going to be validated by the golden rule as well. So just because like every proposal of yours and every proposal and non-proposal of every being is validated by this golden rule does not mean that like law of attraction is true and like manifestation is real. I mean, I guess in a very odd mystical sense, you could analogously say it's like a type of manifestation, that like everything you're thinking about right now, no matter what it is like happening somewhere out there in reality, or not even out there in reality. It's literally happening right here to you right now. And you could say it is via some method like the storytelling axiom, right? So, I mean, I guess in that sort of a sense, you could call it like a manifestation, but that's still very, very different than the law of attraction, where it's this idea that, like you could willfully and egoically manifest $100,000 in your bank account right now. Like, no, this isn't a beneficial self-help topic that you could egoically use to manifest like something into your life. Like, no, it's not that, at least not necessarily. It's all sorts of things. So it's compatible with that sort of an idea, but it's not the same as that idea at all. It's ontologically independent, or is that sort of manifestation idea, it's a very specific ontology. It's a very specific philosophy or way of viewing the world. So that's where you have to kind of distinguish between these two. Distinguish between the sort of spiritual notions, which tell you that your ego can use this sort of stuff to its benefit, versus the sort of non-spiritual but mystical notions, which are very insane and, very mushy and ontologically independent. You can't even really peg it into any ontology anymore because it's not ontology anymore. It's not a specific philosophical position, that sort of stuff, right? So this was just a brief overview of that general topic, going subprimary, where you could go further, reality could go further or deeper than even direct experience, and validate all these proposals and non-proposals, even the Zen dropping of proposals and dropping of dropping, etc., where it's sort of like ungraspable and you can never grasp it or point at it. Just like all of that gets validated by this golden rule. So the interesting thing to think about is that if existence adhered to the golden rule, if you lived in such an existence, it really is this way, it would look identical to what you're experiencing right now, because this would be validated, this would be here, this would be real. And there's more to unpack from that in the future in terms of like indistinguishability and all sorts of other topics I could go over, but I'll leave it here for now. Let me know if you have any questions. If not, I'll see you all next time. Create a nice day.